I don't even give a fuck if you believe me. This sounds unreal, more like a dream I had, and nobody else believes me. But you guys are more trained in occult bullshit, so what the fuck? Be me 19 visiting my grandfather in North Michigan. A bit of backstory about Gramps. Grandpa lives in a cabin like a pioneer. I never really knew him too well, only saw him once every few years. All I really know about him is back in the 70s he was in Nam when I was 17. He confessed to me that he felt terrible about the things he had to do there, apparently beat a kid to death with a shovel. After that, I kind of avoided him, too freaked out to talk to him, especially since he was clearly unstable. Old guilt caught up with him. Now he knows he's nearing the end of his life. Liver problems, refuses medication. Invited me over since I'm his last living relative and he wants to spend time with me before he passes. At first I was hesitant, but I decided this is what my father would have wanted. After about 3 hours of driving, I get to his cabin. Nice place, looks like it's made of Lincoln logs. He's waiting outside on his cabin porch, smoking a pipe in a rocking chain. Looks straight out of the cartoon. Suspenders and all, looks exhausted, dark circles under his saggy eyes. He gets up and gives me a bear hug. He's trying to hug me as hard as he can, but he's clearly weak. We hug for a few minutes, mostly because I find it too awkward to break away. I remind myself that even though I only remember him for a few years, he's known me most of his life. Halfway through he starts kind of breathing heavy on me, sniffles, realize he's been crying silently. Eventually he breaks away red-eyed. Come inside. Anon. Okay, Pa. Come inside to a very cozy cabin. It is getting cold, especially in Michigan. So he has the fire going, he has running water, gas stove, and 2 beds. One of them is very new and quality. I think he bought it just for me. When I get over the initial off-puttingness of his behavior, I begin to care for him. I kind of remember my grandfather, if that makes sense. The bond of family becomes newly important. Decide to be his live-in helper until he dies. That very day he starts to make us some decaf, but halfway through he starts to sweat. I help him to his chair by the fire and finish the coffee. My coffee tastes like shit, but he's still very appreciative, assures me that it's delicious. After the decaf we get ready for bed. He lies on the beat-up small bed and tells me to sleep on the new one. When I tell him we should switch, he refuses. I guess he did buy it for me. He says his prayers and falls asleep. I can't stand watching this dying old man, my own flesh and blood, sleeping on that pile of junk. He's quite small and frail at this age, though not thin. With a bit of effort I manage to lift him up gently and tuck him into the big bed. Move the small bed to the window and make sure to sleep facing it. That way the sun wakes me up. When the sun wakes me up, it's like 6 a.m. I slide the bed back and switch my grandpa back, lay on the good bed for another 20 minutes before I realize I can't fall asleep again. All that lifting woke me up. Decide to just prepare breakfast and pack his pipe for him. Go to an outhouse near his cabin because flushing might wake him up. When I'm done I step outside, notice something behind his cabin. It seems to be a gate holding 6 black horses. They are shackled in these massive metal chains. Each horse has a huge metal ring around their necks. They are all chained together and all to the ground. Since it's like 6 a.m. and the forest is dark, they look creepy as hell. I thought it might have been a trick of the light, but their faces looked fucked up. Pick related is a horse skull. You know how most horses don't look like that skull. These did. Their eyes looked almost red. I thought it might just be a reflection, like how cameras show red pupils. God, was I wrong? Stepped back inside to find Grandpa awake, sitting on his bed. Talked about what we were gonna do for the day. He said his back felt good enough today that he might want to do some fishing. Not to stroke my own ego, but I attribute that to me letting him sleep in a good bed. Let me tell you, he might as well as have been sleeping on the floor. Whatever. After breakfast of eggs and bacon I drive him to a pond near the house. We fish for a while. Silent the entire time. Wasn't awkward though. It was a comfortable silence. silence. I didn't catch anything, but he caught a 3-pounder. Had to help him reel it in. He was very proud of himself and that made me happy. Said he used to love to go out fishing. Told him we'd make it into dinner on the drive back. I asked him about the horses. I had kind of forgotten about them since early morning. Instantly I knew I shouldn't have asked him. His cheerful smile was replaced with a kind of stern grin. He looked like he was forcing himself to maintain a rapidly fleeting smile. Told me not to worry about it. There were just some pets. I almost listened to him, except he nervously quivered when he said worry. Never happened before or after, so I doubt it was just an old man thing. When we got back he showed me how to gut and debone the fish, marinated it in a dry rub for about 30 minutes while he took a break to puff on his pipe. While he was doing that I opened the curtains to the back window and peered at the horses. They hadn't moved at all. They hadn't eaten or slept. They didn't look cold, but they were still shooting hot breath from their nose. I know because it was cold. I saw it. I stepped outside to talk to my grandpa about the horses. Pa, did you forget to feed the horses or something? You don't feed these types of horses, son. I had no clue what he meant, but every time I tried to ask he would just ignore me and change the subject. When he was done, we stepped inside and had our dinner. I noticed he prayed extra long that night. FFW to the next morning I just woke up with the sun and put my grandpa back into his bed. I decided to get a bit closer to the horses this time. Got just barely close enough so I could see them. I don't think they noticed me. Christ, remembering it now sends shivers down my spine. Just as terrifying as I initially thought, if not more so. Shaggy, matted fur, deformed, bent out of shape skulls. I know 100% their ribcages should not have been indented like that. Their teeth looked like they had been chewing on rocks or something. It wasn't just their appearance though. I've been around deformed animals before. It doesn't really bother me so much. They had a fucked up presence, like the feeling in your stomach after you watch some fucked up gore. Initially I had felt bad for them, but now I just wanted them to die. Strangely, however, I also wanted to get closer. Just being around them made me weak in the knees. I couldn't do it. One of them looked me in the eyes, and if I hadn't just used the bathroom I would have shit myself. Ran back into the cabin and hid. Grandpa was just starting to awake, so I tried to just forget about it and get to work. Today was supplies day, meaning we were gonna go into town to refill on food, firewood, toiletries. I decided to buy Grandpa a cake too, not for any special reason, just that it's important to have some fun while he could. Usually he just got someone to deliver him food, but it was good to get some exercise. Plus his back was feeling fine. We rode into town and Grandpa said he was getting sick. Poor guy hadn't been in a car for a while. Motion sickness got to him and we had to pull over. After that I realized we had to go quick. We got to a giant, except they call them something else there. Good and plenty. Something like that. Pick everything up. I hide the cake from Grandpa to surprise him with it back at the cabin. When we get back, something is wrong. I feel that same stomach feeling. There's a fucking racket coming from the back of the cabin. I pull up the car and step outside. The horses are going nuts. Littered on the floor behind them are some white balls. Grandpa tells me very sternly, get in the fucking cabin. Shouldn't we drive away? Son, the worst thing we could do right now is try and escape. I have no clue what the fuck he's on about. When we get inside he starts explaining. Remember that he's an old man and he's injured, so I can hardly understand him. He starts talking about how he didn't know they were there when he bought the cabin. If he leaves he's gonna die. They must have eaten something. From what I can piece together, if you feed them they get stronger and they can lure things in better. Once one of them got a bite, they got enough strength to lure in more and more. The most we can do is hope they run out of things to eat. Asterisk snap. A loud fucking crack, like a whip, snaps through the air. Grandpa goes silent. What the fuck was that, Pa? He stares at me, kind of empty, like looking back at it. He was accepting his death. One of them broke the chains. What the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck? Pa looks at me with a kind of pain in his eyes. Behind you. I whip around, facing the building. You're a good kid, Sonny. Lose consciousness in a second. I come to with the sun beaming on my face, wake up in a pile of my own blood, crowbar at my side, my head aches like fuck. I touch the back of my head, just a flesh wound. I pick myself up and try not to vomit, fail. I sit down and try to come to, everything aches. I'm freezing, wait, why am I freezing? The right wall of the cabin is full of holes, looks like someone threw boulders through there. What the fuck, where's Grandpa? No fucking sign of him, in fact, no sign of anything. I open the door and step outside, check behind. The gates have been trampled, the chains are broken. I get closer, those white things were crushed up rabbits. The horses have chewed them and spit them out, start to piece everything together, promptly vomit again. Long story short, I walked back to the cabin and picked up a few things. I picked up my grandpa's pipe and his bluegrass tobacco, found a golden cross that he kept hidden in his cabinet, drove home without stopping. Next day I called a delivery boy and asked him to deliver to the house so I could see if I dreamed the whole thing. He told me the house was burned down. Guys, I have no idea what the fuck happened that day. I'm sitting here and smoking his pipe. Honestly, it's the only proof I have that any of this happened. My therapist can't explain it since I have physical evidence. My priest can't explain it since there's no records of demon horses or anything as far as we know. My friends tell me I'm full of shit. I don't know who else to turn to. Guys, help me.